So get this. Your brain, right? It's only about 2% of your body weight, but it burns through a wild 20% of your daily energy. That's just an incredible biological fact. And it makes you wonder, where's all that juice actually going?
Well, here's the crazy part. A huge chunk of that energy isn't even for processing what's happening right now in the real world. Nope, it's for running these super complex simulations in the background. Refighting arguments from 3 years ago, trying to guess what your boss is going to say tomorrow, or just spinning up anxiety about stuff that hasn't even happened.
And this quote just nails it. This constant cognitive load, just from managing our own mental stories, is why we're so exhausted all the time. We just kind of accept it as the price of living in a busy world. But what if it isn't? What if you could actually learn to close those tabs?
Okay, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to really dig into what those open tabs are. Then we'll get into a core Zen idea called the 2 arrows of pain. From there, we'll talk about some real-world tools for ditching our rigid mental blueprints, how to build up our resilience, and we'll wrap up with a pretty deep question.
So let's get into it. And I want you to think about these Zen concepts not as some kind of mystical poetry, but as really practical psychological biohacks. Seriously, these are ancient tools designed to cut down on the friction and stress you feel every single day.
To get there, we got to start with a fundamental distinction. The difference between the pain that happens to us and the suffering we actually create for ourselves. And this is where the idea of the 2 arrows comes in.
The first arrow, well, that's just life, right? You twist your ankle. You get sick right before a huge presentation. It happens. It's real pain. But the second arrow, that one is optional. That's the story, the narrative your brain immediately starts spinning. This is a disaster. My career is over because I'm missing this meeting. The sickness is the first arrow. The story of ruin is the second.
So what's firing that second arrow? A huge driver is attachment. And we're not talking about being attached to your favorite coffee mug. In this context, attachment is that rigid psychological grip we have on our mental blueprints. How our career should be going, how our partner should act, how traffic should flow. This puzzle piece analogy is just perfect. From a brain science perspective, it's describing something called a predictive error. Your brain has a prediction, a blueprint for how reality should work. When reality doesn't match, that's an error. The suffering isn't from reality itself. It's from the friction of your brain fighting reality, insisting its map was right all along.
Okay, so if being attached to our fixed predictions is what's causing all this optional suffering, what's the fix? Well, we've got to let go of them. Let's look at 2 really powerful tools for what you could call a mental operating system update.
The first tool is impermanence. And I get it, at first this can sound kind of terrifying, right? The idea that nothing is solid. But once you really let it sink in, it's unbelievably freeing. Why? Because it lets you off the hook from the exhausting job of defending some heavy, fixed identity all the time.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. Clinging to that old identity might feel safe for a minute, but pretty soon, your apps start crashing and the battery dies. Integrating impermanence is like finally running that OS update. So once you've updated your own system, how do you deal with other people? That brings us to tool number 2. The second tool is called the beginner's mind. Think about it. When you deal with a difficult person all the time, you become an expert on them. Your brain instantly boots up a simulation of how they're going to be annoying. You've already had the fight in your head before they've even said hello. Now, let's be super clear here. This does not mean you become a doormat and just accept bad behavior. Not at all. It means you learn from your reaction to them. Their insult acts like a diagnostic tool. It shows you exactly where your system has a weak spot, where your attachments and vulnerabilities are.
And this all leads to this incredibly powerful reframe. The actual physical state of rage, the cortisol spike, the brain fog, that is the punishment. It's happening to you in real time. The goal is to set your boundaries without lighting that self-destructive fire. You can walk away, but with a slow heart rate.
But look, getting to that place where you can just walk away calm and collected, that doesn't happen by accident. You can't just think your way out of a cortisol spike when it hits. You have to proactively build a new internal architecture.
So let's reframe the 5 precepts. Don't think of them as ancient moral rules. Think of them as advanced strategies for managing your cognitive load. Take avoid false speech. Lying is incredibly expensive for your brain. It eats up so much working memory trying to keep the story straight. When you just operate with integrity, you close all those background apps and free up a ton of bandwidth.
And once your system is running clean, you can install some new software.
But, and this is a big but, we are not talking about toxic positivity. That's just pretending everything is fine when it isn't. We're talking about something called weaponized gratitude. It fully acknowledges the negative stuff, but then it aggressively hunts for any utility or value it can find, even in the middle of friction.
I just love this phrase, a hostile takeover. Your brain evolved to constantly scan for threats, for what's wrong, the tiger in the grass. Weaponizing gratitude means you are forcefully overriding that ancient default setting. You refuse to let stress be the only thing your brain logs. You systematically pull value from every single situation.
And the anchor for all of this, the thing that holds it all together, is mindfulness. And not just, take a deep breath. We're talking about understanding it as the actual physical mechanism for shutting down your brain's simulation engine. When you force your brain to focus intensely on your senses, the feeling of air in your lungs, the texture of the table under your fingers, you literally deactivate the part of your brain that creates optional suffering. You're pulling the plug on the second arrow.
So let's tie this all together. We've talked about how our own brains drain our energy with optional suffering. We've looked at tools like impermanence and beginner's mind to stop it. And now, I've got a challenge for you.
The very next time you find yourself in a frustrating interaction, I want you to try this. First, just catch the predictive error. Notice your brain firing up that old simulation. Second, pause it, just for a second. Third, actively drop your assumption about what they're trying to do. And fourth, just observe them, as they are, right here, right now. Just watch what happens to the friction.
And as you start playing with these ideas, I want to leave you with one final big question to chew on. If your anxieties are just loops, if your opinions are always changing, and if your identity is just a story, if you close all those tabs, turn off all the background noise, and strip it all away, what's actually left? If you found this explainer helpful, please like and subscribe for more.